Thank you so much for accepting to come on We Can Learn to Learn vlog. And one of the reasons I'm so happy to have you here is because you have an approach to language that really resonates in the way I learn 6 languages, and it is by sound. And I didn't know that there is a concept that can explain this. And I'm so happy that I met you through a student who is on the spectrum, who's 4 years old, and who is echolaic. And his speech is delayed, and he's working with you as well as another speech language provider.
Mhm.
And thank goodness he's working with you, because you have incredible training in all aspects of speech language therapy and clinical training in hospitals with young and old and adults and all kinds of things, not just in the United States, but also in Zambia, for heaven's sake. So you organize language enriching activities in both English and Tonga to children ages and younger. You speak Tonga?
I do not fully speak. No, no, no. But while I was a graduate student,
Yeah.
getting my master's, I was able to spend part of my time going over to Zambia, which I look back on that experience as teaching me so much about language because I got to understand what is actually important for us to say? How do we communicate with one another? Because having two different languages help put things into perspective for me. And what I will also say is that English is spoken in at least that part of Zambia as well. So it was appropriate for us to use some English, but I did get to learn some Tonga as well and getting to do just getting to really dive into the foundations of language and how we can lift these kids up.
Yes. Yes. And that is so critical, because so much of language is really body language. That's an important building block. So much of it is sound related, right? And so you have specialized in a field that not too many people know about, and that is the Gestalt language processing, which I find really resonates with me and also with the child that I'm working with, and is liberating, because as teachers in an educational setting, we have to keep up with the curriculum, and we work in a group situation. And so if we constantly correct the student, it does something to their self-esteem. And with the GLP, it is not so much of an issue, because the Gestalt language processing respects the child for where they are at. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I feel like I get to spread the good news about Gestalt language learners. I first became familiar with this a few years ago, and it has changed everything about the way that I work with these kids. I'll start by saying that when we think about normal language development, we look at those milestones. When you have a baby, they'll start by having sounds that one day becomes a word, and that word then gets connected to two words, and then to phrases and sentences and conversation. It's those building blocks. But actually, there are two forms of normal language development. The first one, as I described, is called analytic language processors. Analytic meaning like words. We often call these types of kids word babies, that they are using words to create meaning with the world around them. And on the other hand, we have Gestalt language processors that start with full chunks of language, and they break them down through their own stages of development. And so these chunks of language, we call them gestalts or scripts. You mentioned echolalia. That's kind of how we commonly refer to this. They might be echoed immediately, or hours later, or days later, or weeks or months, or even years later, and they might not seem very functional in the moment, but they're incredibly meaningful. And which means that often we can't take those scripts literally. It's important for us to do the detective work to understand what they are meaning by that phrase. These phrases can come from songs, from favorite TV shows, favorite movies, or even from maybe a personal experience. So, some examples of this. My younger brother is autistic and he is a Gestalt language processor. And one of the Gestalts he likes to say is, "Oh, I'm sorry, folks, but you've all guessed wrong. You are not the winner. No prize for you." And it is a phrase that he got from the character Guy Smiley from Sesame Street. And he says it every time that he gets something wrong or you say something incorrectly. And we can see where he made that leap. It makes sense. This
Yes.
comes to him, and he's using that language in that moment. But sometimes the scripts aren't always that easily translatable. So, another one that my brother likes to do is he'll say, okay, love you too. And when you first hear that, you think, oh, that's so sweet. He loves you, and he does love us. But really, what he's communicating in that moment is that he wants my mom to get off the phone. Because before she gets off the phone, she says, okay, love you too, and then gets off the phone. So when he's getting frustrated, he says this, okay, love you too. It's very upsetting. And one example that I gave to you for the child that we work with together is that there was a time when I was first working with him where the family was saying he didn't have a lot of language to communicate frustration, to advocate for himself. And they said that when he was mad, he kept saying, the house we built. And no one understood what that was. Doing the detective work, I know that one of his favorite TV shows is Daniel Tiger, and was able to find that Daniel Tiger has a song where he says, the house we built got knocked down. It made us mad, really, really mad. And the song is called When You Feel So Mad That You Want to Roar, Take Deep Breaths and Count to 4. And when you look at it that way, you understand, oh, he heard this language modeled in this context. He has this emotion tied to it, and that's meaningful. And he is already communicating to us, I'm upset. So what we get to do now is we get to honor that as language. So really briefly, I'll mention that there's a natural language acquisition framework. That work was started back by Dr. Barry Prezant, and then in 2012, Marge Blanc she expanded upon this NLA framework. And so it starts with stage 1, where a child has that whole phrase, like the examples I just gave to you. And then in stage 2, they start to break down those phrases and mix and match those two. So maybe the house we built could be like, I don't know, the house over there or something like that. Maybe over there comes from a different phrase, a different script. Then in stage 3, the child is able to free the word, understands the real meaning behind that word. And then stages 4 through 6 is starting to truly self-generate their own language, their own sentences. And we're working more on grammar to make their language sound a little bit more natural. It's incredibly important to understand that these stages and that this is a normal period of level of development, because what I do see in these children is when they are supported with techniques that do support an analytic language learner by well-meaning caregivers, educators, and therapy providers, is that these kids get stuck. They get stuck with a large vocabulary and not an ability to make their own sentences. So it's really cool to get to really learn these kids and hear what language they're using to attribute to the world. But also I see these kids fly. They make incredibly fast progress. So
yes, our mutual student is flying right now. And he, just for your information, he's starting to have a conversation with me.
Yay. So,
And then when I brought that up with the parents, they suddenly realized he's having a conversation with them too. Because what he said, he said, okay, the parents said, okay, it's time to get ready to go to school. And he said, I'm excited.
oh, great.
Right? And yes, there is so much going on with him. He is flying right now. And that is just, it just fills my heart with joy. So clearly you're passionate about this. And I can see why. And I don't think you have to be on the spectrum for this mode of language acquisition to resonate with you, because there is so much music in language, the poetry, that I can tell you, my parents, they would send me away to learn languages. And one of those trips was I went to live with a family in England. I couldn't speak a word of English. This was a summer project that they had. And I couldn't talk to them. They couldn't talk to me, but we played together. We played badminton. And there I heard every time they missed the ball, they'd say, I'm sorry. I couldn't make out the individual words because I was not familiar with the language. And so I just imitated the music. And then eventually I said, oh, I'm sorry because I dropped the ball, right? And so that really, really resonates. It's a continuum of sounds that you hear and you don't know what to do with it. And then you have to produce it, in distinctive words. It's a lot. It's really a lot. And so, as you know, I have a strong feeling about people's capacity to learn. It's a human right. And especially when it comes to communication and speech, that's also a human right. And we need to expand our toolbox in terms of how we're teaching students. And so I'm wondering, is there a curriculum for schools that is available that teachers can be trained in?
So I did all of my training through the Meaningful Speech course. And it is, in terms of trainings, very affordable. Us in the field know that these trainings can get very pricey, but this one is available to speech pathologists. It's available to teachers and educators. It's available to parents. And I know a lot of parents who have done this course as well because they want to be able to understand their child better and how to support them at home. And so that is one resource that people can do. There and Meaningful Speech creates a lot of content on their blog and on their Instagram page. There are more and more speech pathologists who are becoming familiar with Gestalt language processing, and they're also creating content. So more is out there. But if I could suggest one place to go to, it would be Meaningful Speech.
Yes, I'm going to go there. I am going to take the course because I think it makes sense. It's a empathetic, compassionate, humanistic, respectful way of supporting children without this constant correcting and taking data. Oh, missed. Oh, managed 80%, 70%, 65%. And it takes our attention away from the student, the connection and the feeling of safety, and the student feeling accomplished and good about themselves. It's not deficit oriented. And I really, really love that. And in terms of practicalities, is this, could parents be reimbursed? Is insurance at all involved in this? Can they get reimbursed by insurance?
It can be if the speech pathologist is trained in Gestalt language therapy and then in the NLA framework. That and I mean that gets into also a discussion about insurance. Is your provider in network? Are they out of network? But the provider, it's more about the speech therapist and their approach. And those speech therapists can be in or out of network. for my practice, many of my families receive out-of-network reimbursement for our sessions. I also,
Okay.
there are more speech therapists in the schools that are figuring out how to incorporate this type of therapy in the school setting. So more is becoming available.
Okay. Well, that's very exciting to find out. That is really great. And in terms of you are a resource because you've all along, I mean, I'm so glad I asked for your CV because you've been diagnosing and treating and organizing language enriching activities and teacher training and on and on and on. And right now you're also providing some form of support for teachers. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So, with many of my students, I will go into schools and provide training to the teachers so that they can understand how to best support this student. One thing I will say about Gestalt language therapy is that it is so individualized. You are working with the language that that
Yeah.
child brings to the table. So, in some ways, it becomes difficult to put too large of just a blanket over it because we're looking on this by case basis. But I will provide training to teachers about what's happening for that child, so
Okay.
that they know how to specifically work with that child in the classroom.
Got you.
Another thing that I do offer to families is parent consultations, which is becoming more and more popular for families who don't have access to a speech pathologist who is trained in the NLA framework. Maybe you already have a speech therapist in school and you've looked for someone in your area that is in network and you can't find that. Well, these consultations are a great resource because
Yeah.
they can be once a week, once a month, based off of uh, availability or by what can be afforded or what time allocates, that kind of thing. And in those parent consultations, I will review language transcripts and give training to the family or to the whole therapy team. Here are some strategies that you guys can use in this moment. So, what I would also suggest for if there's anyone that is looking for someone to support their individual child, doesn't have someone available in that moment, there is on Meaningful Speech, there is a whole directory of speech therapists. I'm on that directory of therapists who have completed the training and can provide those services to your family.
Excellent. And you just brought up, you keep on talking about NLA. I'm not sure if everybody knows that that stands for Natural Language Acquisition.
Mhm.
Yes, and that is terrific. It is a natural. I experience natural language acquisition over and over and over again. Um, and I also wanted to ask you about so I don't think people appreciate all the moving parts that go into an individual's ability to speak. It's not just learning language, language centers in your brain. There is also movement coordination. And can you speak to that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Language and speech is a full brain, full body
Yes,
process.
yes,
And but for both Gestalt language learners and analytic language learners, but language is just a representation of how we are experiencing and perceiving the world around us. And so, starting with perception, our brains are first taking in information that we are seeing, that we are feeling, that we are smelling, etc. And we're using several important areas of the brain, like the occipital lobe and the parietal lobe, to work on absorbing all of this information and put it together. So, our Gestalt language learners, as they are having these experiences, they are connecting that to the intonations that are around them. Whether that is the song or modeled language, they're making those connections with those large chunks of language that they're hearing being modeled. Um, and of course, they're processing that information in their temporal lobe. So we've already used a big chunk of the brain here just to process what language is being out there. It's also important to talk about the limbic system, which has the amygdala and the hippocampus, and this is very important for emotional regulation and memory.
Okay.
These students are Gestalt language learners have a strong emotional association that to these scripts that makes it easier for them to recall them. So an example would be a child who is at the park and they fall down and they hurt themselves, and the caregiver comes over and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And now that language learner is attaching the meaning of falling down with that whole script. It might use that in the future when they get hurt, might use that if they see another child getting hurt in a story on the playground, anything like that. And they're not actually asking if you're okay, back with that question, right? They're not actually asking a question, but it's how they've learned to make sense of that situation. So, and back to memory, these students have a very strong top down memory. It's incredibly strong. So all of that is working together just to have an understanding of what they're experiencing. Then there is the aspect of taking that and communicating that to other people, like you were pointing out. Much of what I am doing right now to communicate with you, the sounds that are coming out of my mouth and words and phrases and the intonation that I'm using back, a lot of that is being controlled by the frontal lobe. So messages are being fired to tell my lips, to tell my tongue, to tell my jaw, to tell my lungs how to move in coordination to make these sounds that I'm wanting to communicate so that you can understand the thoughts that are in my own brain. I'm telling you, the more and more I learn about language, the more fascinated I am that any of us can do it at all. It's
Right? It
it
is.
is an absolute miracle.
And so fast.
So fast. It's so fast. And these kids who maybe need a little bit more extra time to process, I mean, how do any of us do this? It's amazing. And I'd say also that, oh, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm a big believer, though, just to support you and what I've seen on your resume, is that you work with a lot of OT and PT, occupational therapists and physical therapists. And I'm a big supporter of that too. I don't think a speech language provider can do it all on their own. I mean, they can, but if we have the support of physical therapy and occupational therapy for the students who may not know how to coordinate their muscles, who may not know how to, how to process information. And let's not forget the ability to hear. And of course, we have the polyvagal theory with Steve Porges, who has shown that if there is chronic adverse childhood experiences, it can alter the eardrum, tighten it, so that the child may not even hear the human voice because it's tuned into high or low frequencies of sound above and below the human speech. So can you speak to that, about physical therapy and occupational therapy and how that is so important for our students?
Absolutely. I mean, how I first started about this, talking about perceiving the world that is around us. Many of the students that I work with who are autistic and also Gestalt language learners are having a lot of difficulty regulating and putting all of those experiences together. Maybe their sensory system is delayed or out of whack, or however you would like to talk about that. And what that means for me when I'm working with the child is, of course, I'm taking input from the whole team, from the physical therapist and the occupational therapist, but I'm also creating sensory experiences for them because that is helping them attach language to things. It's waking up their sensory system to allow them to perceive new language models that are being other children that I work with who are at this time non-speaking, maybe that means that we're doing jumping up and down on a trampoline or moving on a ball, or we're crawling, or we're playing with sensory bins. Children need all of the inputs to be able to allow their body to integrate all those messages in order to language. So it really is, we want that holistic approach to the
Yeah.
child. Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. And really, how do you energize your body? If the child there's also breathing involved too. If the child can't breathe right through their nose and is a mouth breather, isn't that an issue also in terms of just having enough oxygenated blood and enough energy to pay attention?
Yes, and I will look, making sure that they're not. Our hope is that a child isn't mouth breathing, that they're able to do more of that nasal breathing and have enough core support to get all of the air to come out. All of
Yes.
that definitely important. I would like to give one quick note back to Gestalt language learners, because one thing that we see for a lot of these learners that are still using those stage one is that they are very unintelligible often, because, as you were mentioning earlier with your story of the I'm sorry, they're not, they don't quite yet know what that word means. They're just trying to imitate those sounds that are in there. And sometimes these gestalts are a few words, sometimes it's a sentence, sometimes their gestalts are full paragraphs and paragraphs long. They're not trying to get out every single word that's there. In fact, sometimes these students, almost like a VCR, are trying to speed themselves up to get to a certain part. And it will sound like a VCR. So sometimes parents have come to me and said, I understand what you're saying about Gestalt language processor, but can you also work with them on articulation? Because we don't know what they're saying. And sometimes these students will have comorbidities, as you're speaking to, that maybe they have like a childhood apraxia of speech where they're having a lot of trouble coordinating that. Maybe they're also, there, I won't go into too many specifics, but there's different comorbidities that could be impacting their speech intelligibility. However,
Exactly.
However, for some students, like the student that you and I share, at times that he's being unintelligible, it's not because he can't produce all of the sounds. It's
Mhm.
because that word that he's trying to produce isn't meaningful in the way that's meaningful to us. And we have
Mhm.
to, it can make it hard for us to understand, but
Mhm.
I think that's important to point out too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chloe, our time is up. I know you have another client just waiting in the wings to come in and benefit from your session. We have to have more conversation. This is part one because there's
Great.
so much more. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.